Father, thank you for bringing us together, and thank you for this technology that we can come together from all over the world. We ask that you would open our eyes and our ears to what you're doing these days. We want to follow you. We want to do your stuff, and we want to bring glory to your name, and we want to bring you to the lost and dying people of this world. Help us. We really need your help. And we welcome you here today. We welcome the Ruach HaKodesh. Help us to understand what Eric is going to share with us today. We just pray that Eric, you would give him the words to say, you would give him glory.
Amen.
I heard something there's a news item that their checkpoints, toll booths, you might disguise them as, on the highways are being set up, and various agents of the federal government will be stopping people and asking to see their papers and documents. And if you don't have the documents, then you get hauled away elsewhere. And some people have said, well, I have a religious exemption from obeying certain imposed behavioral requirements because I believe such and such. It reminds me, Kurt, you might be able to pull this up. Keith Green, a singer back in the 70s in California, had an album cover on a album called No Compromise. You could find that picture. Everybody else is bowing down. One person in the crowd is standing up, refusing to bow, and the guy being carried on it's called a litter, the carriage with the muscle guys carrying it, and he's, who's this? Who dares to defy my word? No Compromise. Pretty good album, especially back for the frame of mind back in the day.
What was the album's name?
Excuse me?
What's the album name?
No Compromise. Keith Green. So anyway, somebody had put up on the internet a few weeks back saying, hey, here's the verses that you need to show, because the federal agents apparently were saying you have to, if you're going to claim a religious exemption, and there's all kinds of different religions, but you have to show us the quote from your holy book. Which quotes are you basing your religious exemption upon? So then we'll determine whether that's a valid claim to grant you your religious exemption of having to conform to other mandated requirements of your behavior. So here's this statement. Federal documents are demanding to have cited the scriptural texts whereby one can claim a religious exemption. These references will be assessed for value and determined to be acceptable or not, as one would present evidence to a court of law. The sacred script, which I acknowledge with all due respect for its merits, is not fit to be scrutinized by the minds of infidels and unbelievers, atheists or agnostics, heathens or pantheonists, who by nature are blind to its credibility, ignorant of and apathetic to its voice. To translate its own voice into another tongue does not clarify the obfuscation of one refusing to see. To give elaboration of details concerning a fundamental issue is of no benefit to the investigator who has no idea of and no concern for the foundational essence of the subject. The regard I carry for its intrinsic vitality, it being the heartbeat of life itself, it being the conduit of the most delicate and valuable treasure comprehensible to the mind of man, it being the Shafa Kadosh La Yahweh, Kol Elyon, Haderek La Debarti Melchizedek, cannot be afforded the careless and brutal disregard of abortionists and willful murderers, thieves and liars who care for nothing else than to desecrate its blossom as a plaything. The beauty of truth is but roadkill to some. The text is Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Wa, Zion, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Zadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav. Whatever part is incomprehensible to you, please regard the preceding paragraph. There you go. That's it.
That's wonderful. I don't know, other than you, I think that probably coming from you, but you maybe got a guideline from someone else, because it's something similar other than the letters. That would be something like Franklin Graham would say, or something like that. So I think it's really it's wonderful. It's really well said, because if you take the scripture that says, "Don't cast your pearls before swines," because that's exactly what you'd be doing.
Right. So actually, I wrote this up last night, but the Hebrew phrase is Shafah Kadosh LaYahweh. That is the language or the tongue Kadosh, some translate it as holy, by or of or regarding Yahuwah. Kol Elyon, that's the voice of the Most High, or the supreme highest voice. And Haderek is the way. La Debarti is according to the terms and stipulations as we agreed. Melaki or Melki is my king, but it's also one who walks in the way I said to go, one who regards the halakha, my halakha. And Zadik is not only the word righteous, but it's also victory, deliverance, and salvation. So that's not from a verse other than the last three words, Debarti Melki Zadik, is in Psalms, and it's typically translated the order of Melchizedek. That word Debarti, we've discussed before, is translated simply as the word order, but actually the word Debar means word or speech, or it means pasture or plague, or that which follows, like a raft of luggage pulled behind the ship, as it says in the dictionary. So it's something coming in the future, which is a result of our actions that we do today, which is essentially a synonymous word with the word Yaakov or Jacob, which means something following, a reward following, a payday following a week or a time of labor. And Melchizedek, translated Melchizedek, or king of righteousness, actually could be read as the one who actually walks according to the terms and stipulations of righteousness, which yields victory, deliverance, and salvation. It's the highest voice. It's the Shafah is not just lip, language, or tongue, shin, pei, hey, but it also means to restore to health and cure from lunacy. It's the clear zone at the edge of a riverbank or a lake where the vegetation doesn't grow. It's the bare top of a windswept hill. It's to clear things away. So you might say that just in that phrase, those who think or ponder or meditate on, that would all be the Hebrew word hey gimel hey, haga, which also means to navigate, steer, helm, rudder, and phonics, to express words phonetically, which is syllabalization, which literally means knowing how to spell words based on the pronunciation of the parts, the letters. So then this text of the alphabet letters, you'd pronounce Abagadaha Kalamana Sahafatsa Karashata. So we've kind of joked around. It's not really a joke, but that's the word from John 1:1, and is the one word that is spelled by each one of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which nobody ever thinks of as a word. But a word is just a group of letters that mean something, and so the alphabet itself actually is a word. And we've talked about this before. Someone was saying, okay, so what does it really mean? Well, as the word Haggah says, navigate, and it also means meditate, ponder, and steering. And so we're not going to talk about this week. It'll be another week, but I did that thing called the treasure map, which is on erichtology.net. It's also one of the cards in the erichtology card set, where a treasure map is designed to be cryptic so that only those who are supposed to know can figure it out. And it's retained for a future time, a future generation even, perhaps. I remember seeing something on internet years ago, YouTube, something about treasure map seekers, hunters. And there was an actual treasure map that somebody found about some loot that was buried back in the 1800s in the Old West, New Mexico or something, wherever it was. And it was drawn almost like a horse's head outline. And it's like, what does this have to do with where the treasure is? But it's a treasure map. And you would have to know why there's this horse's head drawn on this piece of paper. And there was a couple other little things. And somebody was up on a mountaintop looking down in this one particular area, and they realized the shape of the river in the bottom was exactly the shape of what looks like this horse's head. And he realized it was kind of a camouflage. If you didn't have any idea that this part of the country existed, and you didn't ever see it from a satellite view or from this particular mountaintop, you'd never know that that river was actually what was being drawn on the map and disguised as a horse's head. And then you just got to find, well, okay, then where, according to the rest of the markings on this map, do you go find that treasure? So to say the ALEF-BEIT, the Hebrew ALEF-BEIT, is actually a treasure map. We don't think of it as treasure map. We think of it as just a string of letters. Throughout history, the Hebrew ALEF-BEIT has been regarded as a random compilation, which is to say the meanings of the letters were nothing. Yeah, they knew that the letters meant something way in the ancient past, and people do generally know that the word Aleph does mean ox. It also means 1,000. The letter Bet does mean house. Gimel is camel. In fact, here, let me go through these for somebody new that doesn't know these things. The word Dalet literally means door. Hey is the word used that means the. If you think about it in English, who invented the word the? Why do we even have it? The, a simple little sound in English, the. What's it mean? The. It's used to not just point to something, but to reference the. It kind of specifies, but it's still general. It's not. This is the word that means specifically, but the. I'm just saying, if you've ever pondered language, what a weird thing. Over the years, I've mulled or pondered these things. Decades ago. The. What a strange word, the. And then we have meaning associated with that sound, the. I can say there's a word like duh, duh, similar to the, but it's the. What does the mean? Well, Homer Simpson made it pretty famous. Duh. Valley Girls made it pretty famous. But what I'm saying is that there's a collective consciousness, you might say, in that a simple little sound bite, a phonetic utterance, duh, that somebody thought of, one person, and started using it. And then everybody starts using it. Then you teach your children in school, and pretty much everybody begins to take it for granted that that's just what it means, though maybe it doesn't mean that at all. Well, the fact that collectively as a society, we attribute meaning to a sound, it does mean that. However, the question is, what did it originally mean? Originally. So, and I'm trying to describe the way Hebrew works, because Hebrew is a basic collection of sounds. What's that? Ba, ga, da, ha. So in Hebrew, instead of the, they go ha. So that famous word ha, Shem, well, the word Shem means name, but it's also fame, renown, reputation, the occupation, which is to say what you put your attention and labor to of all your concerns. If you love music, then part of your Shem is that you love music. If you love sports or statistics of what other people do playing sports, then that's part of your Shem. It's where you're at, what you're about. So the word Shem also means here, and it means there. It's where you're at. It's what you appreciate, what you love, what you dislike, it's just, how does it taste to you? That's part of your Shem. So this letter hey, ha, the fifth letter, is used as the suffix at the end of the word as the feminine suffix. What does that even mean? In English, we don't use masculine and feminine suffixes. In Spanish, you do. It either ends in an O or an A. O suffix, machismo, that would be the masculine suffix. Casa, house. A is the feminine suffix. And what does that mean? Well, then you have to take those ideas and elaborate on them. So understanding, to get a society, a group of people, a community, a country, a culture that all has a homogeneous agreement of what words mean, develops over the ages. And so people think that the Semitic alphabet just kind of developed. Let's just generally say Neanderthals or cavemen, troglodytes. Troglodytes means cavemen. Uncivilized, unrefined, just did they have grunts? Oh, what does that mean? That means I'd like another piece of fish, please. It was mighty tasty. We don't know what they meant. So what I'm saying is that when you look in a dictionary and you say, oh, this is what that ancient Hebrew word means, it's like, not necessarily. Or this is the way they spoke it. Not necessarily. I've heard professional linguistic authorities say, nobody has any idea what Hebrew actually sounded like, as for when King David spoke it. We have rabbis and sages, pretty smart guys, who through the years made it their business to sustain the expression, the phonetic expression of words and their meanings for the benefit of all. But then we know that if the secret treasure was wrapped up in the Hebrew language, what you don't want to do is throw your treasure to the masses, to the infidels, to the thieves and liars who just want to pillage your resources. You don't do it. I was reading a book about synagogues once, long time ago, and this book showed pictures of archaeological ruins of synagogues from different countries scattered around the world and looking at different things. But they mentioned in there that one of the, and we don't live this way today necessarily because we live in cities and there's city water, but they said, boy, back in the olden days, the cardinal rule, one of the first things you ever teach your children is never tell a stranger where we get our water source. There's a very interesting film called Manon of the Spring, a French film. It was a sequel, the prequel, you might say. The first showing was called Jeanne de Fleuret. Mark, I probably butchered the French, but Jeanne de Fleuret was with Gerard Depardieu, French film with English subtitles. I thought it was an astoundingly great film. There was no car chases, no real love story or detective, but it was just a human interest story. And just to say, that particular movie, the first film was about 3 hours long, I think. It was 2.5 or something. It was long. And at the end of the first film, I felt disgusted and was thinking, is there no justice in this world? It's just the outrage, what evil people get away with. And that's the way you end the film. It's like, great, I just spent 2-3 hours and that's the way I feel at the end of the movie. I mean, why do you watch a movie if you're going to end up just feeling just bad inside? Well, the particular day that this film was playing was down in Los Angeles. It was about close to 40 years ago. They came that same night. The sequel had just come out, and it was called Manon of the Spring, and it was playing across town. So we went to go see that one too. Another 2-3 hour movie. And at the tail end of that, Manon of the Spring, when you see the turnaround of justice, it almost rips your heart out, and you think, gosh, maybe justice is too severe. What? 2 hours ago, you were thinking there's not enough justice on the planet, and then at 2 hours later, you say maybe the justice is actually too severe. The very interesting thing about these two films, the word Manon is actually Hebrew, and Manon of the Spring, this little girl who was a shepherdess up in the hills, found the source of water for a certain village. Hence the tie to what we're discussing. And I'm not going to give it away. It's worth watching the movie if you can deal with the English subtitles and all. But when you see the way the justice played out, even back then, that was probably around 1987, I'm thinking, when that second film came out. I realized that the justice I saw was the divine hand. And I didn't even realize how much mishpat, this word mishpat, in the scriptures book here, it's simply called right ruling. It's a lot more than right ruling. As a matter of fact, we mentioned that the throne of Elohim, it says, is founded on mishpat and zadikah, translated righteousness or justice and righteousness. It's more than that. But if you don't know the essence of the word, where did it come from? And is this just grunts of prehistoric, pre-developed, uncivilized humans, subhumans, whose words were associated with various objects in their culture, ox house, camel door, if you think that's all the alphabet is, you've missed it. It's like you can't see the forest because the trees are in the way. Show me the forest. It's right there. No, there's trees. Where's the forest? It's that same type of thing. So what I read in the very beginning, okay, here's the sacred text. ALEF-BEIT, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zion, Chet, Tet, Yod. There's the first 10. Yeah, what does that mean? Listen, if you don't know anything I say, you're still not going to know. It's going to lead you astray. Then it's like, oh, come on. Well, then how do you lock on to truth? There's a certain word that means the beauty of truth. It's the word voluptuous, and it's the word for Eden. Ayin Dalet Nun. It's one of the meanings in the dictionary. The beauty of truth. The word Eden. Everything we read there was on purpose. So, is to specify something with intention. Well, whose intention? If these are just letters which are grunts, which are random associated pieces of a foreign culture, then none of it matters. We could just invent new letters with new meanings, and it's just as valid, maybe more so pertinent for our present society. The fact that each one of these letters can be correlated, choreographed, can be exactly fit to the Mishkan pattern, which is exactly the plan for the 7 days of creation and the 7 Moedim and the Beatitudes and that Mishkan itself, and then to find it laid out in other places. It's the signature, the fingerprint, the iris scan, as it were, of Yahweh, the creator of the universe and the Elohim Zavot of Israel. It's his personal, it's actually his Shem, it's his style. So to calibrate the letters to his identity is everything. And if you say, oh, these are the letters and they just mean, here, I'll follow through with it for people that don't know. The letter Vav is the masculine suffix, and literally as the masculine suffix, it means he. Hey, Dale Hedman just joined. It means he or it. Sometimes it means you or they. So I've seen, I'm sure there's rules of grammar, which I'm ignorant of. I apologize for that. But I've found that Hebrew doesn't necessarily have the rules that we might have in English, where something is always used the same way. For example, I've seen a tav as the suffix of a word can mean they, can mean you. Maybe it doesn't mean either. Maybe it's just a tense of time. Okay, well, how do you learn this? So I expressed that my style of learning this is the uncleric method. Uncleric. The word cleric, where we get the word clergy and clerk, means those who are literate and make words, like a clerk files papers, works behind the counter at some sort of registry or the archives. A librarian, for example, who, because they're familiar with words and letters, they know just where to look for something, where to put something, how to research something. And in the past, the great majority of people were not literate. A cleric, see, it's the same soundbite. Cleric, clerk, clergy. They're the ones who are supposed to know how to read the sacred words and tell the rest of us who have no idea. So we trust them. But like hiding the water from a village, the responsible parties who supposedly were literate hid, obfuscated, made obscure the truth. Why? Were they being dirty rats, or were they protecting the sacredness, the sanctity, the accuracy of the valuable treasure of the truth from the rest of the marauders, the bandits, the invaders who would just steal it and desecrate it, like Vikings, like Huns, like pirates? Stick your favorite group you love to hate: Americans, British, French, German, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, whoever. We've all been guilty of doing the same thing. It's not disparaging any particular people group. It's just what people do. Anybody that has a valuable treasure, you need to either bury it, hide it, disguise it, or make it seem like it's worthless to an outsider, absolutely worthless, so that they won't harm it, destroy it. Maybe they'll bust it up anyway, but how do you hide the truth? So in Daniel chapter 12, the archangel Gabriel, verse 4 says to Daniel, hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Okay, so what did Daniel do? Not like Abraham, who in Genesis 15, he was told to separate the stars and say, oh, nobody can count the stars. Okay, you don't have to. I was just kidding. Just believe. Oh, okay, just believe. I don't believe that's what Abraham did, because the word amen, amen, hey, aleph mem nun, or aleph mem nun hey, or drop yods and vavs between the other letters, and it all means to be trained, skilled, an artisan, educated, practiced, proven to be accurate in your craftsmanship. And it said Abraham did that. So I believe Abraham did sefer the stars. The word sefer doesn't just mean count. You see, this is the way words are hidden, and this is the way the treasure is obscured from the pillagers. The word sefer also means scroll, book. Of course, in the days of scrolls, there were no books. It also means to narrate, to coif or shape hair. It means frontier, border, boundary. It's in the way you get a boundary is to go to the outlying edge, which is to say your property line, and dig holes and stick in a piece of wood, or put fence post and then string wire, or even a row of plants or something. You designate between the points. It's geometry. It's called sephering. Blend of Hebrew and English, sephering. You got to sepher how the language works. Samic pei resh, sepher. Hi, Paul. So the idea that Daniel was told to hide the words and seal the book and did nothing, no, he did what he was told to do. So if Daniel was to hide the words and seal the book, the way to find out what he did is to look at the spelling of the word. Samic tav mem means to make anonymous, general opinion, obscure, meaningless. Het tav mem, het is samic is like a skeleton or a backbone. And het is an enclosure. So to put something in enclosure, like putting a body in a tomb and sealing it so it can't be opened, like putting radioactive material inside some sort of drum and putting it in the bottom of the ocean, or burying it encased in concrete, or putting cargo on a ship and sinking the ship, or anything, that's het tav mem. So what did Daniel do? Why did Yahuwah have Daniel hide the words and seal the book? Somehow he wanted to keep the valuable treasure out of the minds, out of the hands of any humanity until the time of the end. That phrase is ayin dalet, hyphened with the word spelled ayin tav. So it's two words yoked together, ayin dalet hyphen ayin tav. And I don't know who came up with the hyphens, whether that was Masoretic scribes or Daniel put it in. But nevertheless, two words read as one word, translated until, there's no the, it's just until and time. And then end is spelled kuf zadi. Doesn't even say the end. That would be hakutz. Okay, so if this is the time of the end, we'd have to say, is this the end of the world? Well, it might be the end of the curse. The end of the 2007 30-year curse was 2010. So this is the era of the time of the end of the curse. So this fits. So what did Daniel hide and what did Daniel seal? So we're thinking it's the meanings of the words. So this idea that rabbis, teachers, professors, clerks, clerics, clergy have a reason to hide things because they don't want people to know, yet their occupation is that they're facilitating people knowing. That's a great way to hide it. Take the only guy who knows and have him mislead, misdirect, lie to, whatever. That's just what happens. So the upshot of what I'm trying to say is the letter Vav is a connector, and we've lost the connection to what the words and letters really mean. In fact, it's insisted upon by Miles Jones, the guy who wrote the book, The Writing of God, and Michael Heiser and Michael Brown, really smart academians, theologians. These guys are world class. They've got a lot of stuff to say all over the internet and books they've written. They've got doctoral degrees after their names. But they insist that the Paleo-Hebrew letters mean nothing. And if they do mean something, they're just glyphs of Canaanite deities, which, because of the second commandment, thou shalt have no graven image, means that Yahweh erased it. And if we go back and consider that these letters are pictures, images that mean something, we are now being dirty, rotten sinners for saying so. Okay, well, it seems to me then that Daniel did a great job of hiding the words and sealing the book, such that even our smartest, most true-hearted, I could say religious, not in a bad way, not in a way of defaming them, but saying they're religiously trying to hold the truth, and they think it's been done away with and doesn't exist. It's like, well, that's because Daniel hid it until this time. So of course they'd think that, especially if they got their degrees anytime before 2010. But it wasn't that suddenly 2010, oh, everybody knows. It's like, no, ever since 2010, now it's available. And that even itself is a certain logical process, which some might debate and say, well, we could talk about that. But my point is, if I looked at the first 7 letters, because there's 7 days in a week, and the word 7 means to swear a vow, literally the word Shin Bet Ayin is the number 7, and it means to swear a vow. It also means surfeited, satisfied, which is to say, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing, which is Yahuwah's own personal way of doing things. That's also enveloped in the number 7. Shavah, Shin Bet Ayin. But it also means the curse you get for breaking the vow. The number 7. So I could take the package of the first 7 letters and say, ox, house, camel, door, the letter Vav means and, it's a connector, but it also means but, or however, or when, while, if, then. I mean, the letter Vav can mean a lot. It's just a connecting word, like a bridge. And then the letter Zion is a weapon, which means to be cut off, disassociated, the bridge washed out. Like you have a moat around a castle. The letter Het is a compound, so I could picture the letter Het like a castle surrounded by a moat. Well, the moat would be the Zion, because it's what cuts off access into the Het. And then, but the Vav would be like this bridge, like a drawbridge, which falls down over the moat, so that you can get from the hey place where there's outside something revealed, look at the bridge over the moat so we can get access inside the castle. What I'm saying is that there's pictures wrapped up in these words which have nothing to do with the words. So if Aleph is an ox, but Aleph means 1,000, Aleph also means 1, W-O-N, the number 1. It also is the first letter of the word for Elohim. And it's like, well, so what? It doesn't mean Elohim. It's just the first letter of the word Elohim. Brad Scott talked about there being first use, meaning the first time a word appears anywhere in Scripture, what's it mean in that context? And that sets up a precedent where you can bet that even if it's translated differently, you can go back to its first use and say that establishes really what the meaning of the word is. You can do the same thing for letters. I've heard it said, maybe it was Brad Scott, maybe it was others, that the first time a letter shows up as the first letter of a word, like the letter bet in Bereshit, the word Aleph in Elohim, that sets up the essence or the meaning of the letter. This is another way to conduct a study. Where's the first word anywhere in Genesis? Just start reading where a word starts with Gimel. What word is that? That tells you something about the meaning of the letter Gimel. But Gimel means camel. But a camel is used as a transport vehicle to cross the desert, going back and forth, back and forth. Well, what does an ox do? An ox pulls a heavy load, like a tractor. That's a house. It's a container that you dwell in. So what I'm saying is that I can simply say Aleph is ox or 1 or 1,000, but it's this strong pulling a load. Like an arrow, it's not pulling any load. Yeah, it is. The load of an arrow is to pull the intent of the archer to the bullseye of the target. If it's a living creature, it's going to kill it. If it's just a target, it's aiming for a certain bullseye. But the arrow is certainly pulling a load. The load is the intention. So the Aleph represents the intention. The archer, the architect, the artist, the administrator, those all start with the letter A. Those are Aleph things. Bet, the container. Well, it turns out that this ALEF-BEIT song, if you look real close at the lyrics of that song, and we're bumping up against an hour here. We'll have to quit and get onto the real talk here in a few minutes. I'll go through the lyrics real quick. Aleph is the plan that Abba purposed in his heart. Something about the inner intention of the Creator before he determined to give himself a name for our reference, Ehyeh or Yahweh or Yeshua or any other name that might be associated with him, Creator, Maker, Sustainer, whatever. Any of those words, those are words spelled with letters that we associate meaning to. So if you look at the meanings of the letters of the alphabet, all their meanings lay out the story of creation. So I can take the first 7 letters, Aleph through Zion, and lay them on top of Genesis 1, the 7 days of creation, and see a correlation there. But then I can also take the letters Het through Zadi and do the same thing, though there's 11 letters there. So as a code, it's not 7 and then the next 7, although there might be something to that. There's 7 and then the next 11 are overlay fit, a little bit of an elaboration of the first 7, leaving you a remnant of Kuf Resh Shin Tav, those 4. And it's like, yeah, well, what do you do with that? These are all for pondering. It's a code. So if Vav is the connection and Zion is the disconnection, and Het is this castle on the other side of the moat, then there's something inside the castle. And so for Daniel to put a Het Tav Mem, a seal, and hide the words inside the sealed compound, means that we have to know how to get across the moat and into the compound. How then do you decipher what was hidden? So if I go back to Aleph is the plan that Abba purposed in his heart. What's Bet? Well, Bet is the first letter of Bereshit. It's the universe. It's creation. Bara. Bereshit. In the very beginning. Bet is a prefix letter that means in, on, with, among, through, against. It's one thing in comparison to another. So Bet's the number 2, but Bet's not just house, but house is a type of body. It's a type of matter. It's a place. And Aleph being 1, referring to the infinite Elohim, who didn't need a place. He was the guy that existed in some place before there was any place. So place is space. Does it include time? Not necessarily. Time is a categorization, an indexing, a sequencing of events, but space is just the environment. So Bet is a type of environment that he built. Well, that's the universe, the cosmos. Gimel is a movement. Well, as soon as you got movement, now you can say where'd you come from, where you're going. So Gimel sets up the concept of time. Bet didn't necessarily. What's Dalet? Well, if Dalet's a door, it's a choice, in or out. Going up to an intersection, do you turn that way or that way? Dalet is an option, which means things are not blatantly mandated, but somebody needs to make a determination. Who's that somebody? Well, if Elohim is the great creator of all, the Echad, Aleph-Bet Dalet, the one, the unified, the one that fills all the be-all of, we don't even know how to put categorizations. I'm saying I'm taking English words. It's like, as soon as I express the English word that seems to be everything, it's nothing. Because he's so beyond anything that we reference by words in time and space and in human consciousness. Well, we're locked in this bed. We're locked in this little space. And he's everything beyond the space. What did he do before there was time? Well, time is a created thing. Therefore, what did he do before there was time? There was no time. Time is a created thing. He's the guy that created the concept of time. He's the guy who had the idea to create something that we think of as an idea. He had the big idea before there was anything that even needed to be thought about, to have something to be thought about. So to have something to think about, that's Bet. The big idea that there could be an idea is the Aleph. So Bet's the container of all he would, to say he would impart. Well, he's the source of putting everything in. The Gimel, the sent one. Gimel, the voyager, the ambassador. Gimel is to transverse through space, maybe through time, maybe through dimensions. To enter through the door, the Dalet. So Dalet is a concept of a portal, of a transition, of the ability to go from one phase to another, from one dimension to another, from one frame of mind to another. None of this existed before he thought up the idea to make it all exist. So you associate this with the days of creation. I mean, this whole thing could be elaborated out for quite some time. But hey, look, hey, what? Yeah, hey is the information. The, look, hine means behold, here, gladly. He's the Vav, man. Well, the Vav is the number 6. The Vav is the masculine suffix. Vav doesn't mean man. You got Ish, you got Gabor, you got Inish, but Vav, that's not a man. It's the masculine suffix, but it also is the connector. So somehow man's occupation is to be a connector. I've heard people say, well, people say the number 6 is man because man was created on the day 6. Well, so was the animals. Doesn't mean that Vav means animals. So part of the understanding of all this is to get your mind out of a certain box into another bigger box that you didn't even know was there. And you got to allow your mind to freewheel. But not just free will in any way, it's got to fit the meanings of the words. And I'm suggesting that this is the way the words were hidden. This is what Daniel did. And we could elaborate on Daniel 12. There's other videos about that. But to be able to look at the concepts, if Vav is the man, Zion, cut off. Zion means to cut off. It's the one day when Yahweh cut the Shabbat day off from the other 6. It's not just, oh, that's just what he did. No, there's a message there. That's Vav and Zion. There was a package of 6 working, all connected together, and he separated the 7th day from all the other 6. And he rested. But that means he did nothing? No, to rest is something. To rest is a type of work. He invented the concept of rest as a very serious and impactful thing to do, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago, like hitting the finalize button on a computer program. The one of seven, the distinction of how to fulfill the vow. Sevenness, or adorned with weapons, to be cut off by a weapon. Zion is weapon. I've mentioned before, even the word Xena, the warrior princess, you know, that TV show, that comic book, Xena, that's Zion, same word. Weapons were her jewelry. 10-minute warning. The Zion one of sevenness. Selah. Stop and think about that. How do you think about that? Well, that's what we're doing. We're mulling through the meanings of the letters here. So for me to say the Shabbat being the seventh day, no, let's change it to the first day to honor Jesus. You know, the Vav man who was Zion, so when Pilate says, Hine et Ishu, or behold this man, or in Latin, ecce homo, he was pointing to, well, that's the letter He, like the man, the Vav, the, and then Zion is the one with weapons. So he had the crown of thorns and he had ripped them apart with the Roman flail, the whip. Yeshua's body was adorned with weapons, both as the crown, as the weapons ripped his flesh apart, the Roman robe that he put on him. And then he said, look at this man, look what we have done to your king. This is your great one. And look what we did. Well, that's essentially the meanings of the letters He, Vav, Zion, as if the alphabet itself was the prophecy of the Messiah, Mashiach. The word Mashiach, mem is a prefix, shin yod het, mem shin yod het. Shin yod het can mean swimmer. It also means the pit that you jump into to swim in. It also means anointed, but it also means conversation and communication. So to put the mem prefix means Mashiach can mean this is the tangible, the one who is the substance of the conversation, the communication. What communication? The alphabet as a whole piece. For this one, Yeshua, to be the one, the man whose task in life, coming from the Aleph realm, taking on the composition matter of the universe, Bet coming into the universe as the voyager, Gimmeling, then Dalet entering through the door of He, the feminine suffix, the woman being birthed through the door into the world as a man of Vav, and then being put to the weapon, Zion. And yet we look back, reading the letters the other way, he came as the drawbridge over the moat to give us access into the Het, which is the Father's kingdom. And we can read it that he said, I am the door. Well, he came through the door of his mother, being born as a human, but he said, I'm the door by which you, hey, he's giving us, illuminating the door, the Vav man illuminating that he is the door, the access by which we can Gimel back. So Gimel is back and forth, back to the Bet, the house of the Father. Well, if we can Gimel back to the house of the Father, reading the alphabet this way, it looks like it's being read that way, where he's the drawbridge over the moat by which we can get into the Het. The thing about the alphabet, we don't just have to read it in one direction. It's a severe mystery. It's the greatest treasure for human consciousness to find. It's the glory of Elohim to hide a mystery. It's the glory of kings to discover a mystery. Kings, who are they? Well, those are those wealthy fat cats who have everybody else do their work for them. It's like the word king, as we said earlier, is melech, which means one who walks as instructed. So isn't this interesting that the word Shabbat, the seventh day rest, lines up with the letter Zion, which is the moat around the castle. And so for 2,000 years, ever since Constantine, Shabbat has been illegal, and you'd be put to the weapon if you tried to keep Shabbat, literally. And so the Shabbat essentially is this protective device to keep everybody out of the kingdom who won't regard Shabbat. Imagine that. If you don't keep Shabbat, you can't access the mysteries, the insights, any available truth on the other side of that het perimeter. You can't have access to it. And then here comes Yeshua as the drawbridge over the moat. What are you doing? You saying I can just come in because you said so without keeping Shabbat? Now that's what we're told. But is that true? To a certain degree, I could say, well, the letter het is the number 8. That represents eternal life. So Yeshua laid his life down out here in the world amongst us, dead ones, sinners, blind, ignorant, and yet he gave us access. Okay, because you can read this many ways, many ways. 4 minutes to go. What I'm saying is that there's numerous paths by which to read the Aleph-Bet. And one friend had said, hey, I claim that Gimel is the sent one who's coming from heaven to earth. That's Yeshua. By golly, I can find in the dictionary where it says Gimel means raise your head up in an arrogant way. So that's not I reject this whole thing. It's like, well, okay, that's up to you if you want to reject this whole thing. But maybe it means it was the proud privilege for Yahushua, however you want to say his name, to come from the heavenlies to the earth realm. It was his great privilege and honor that he did with his head held high, because the irony is the word dalit, meaning door. Look at the word in the dictionary, dalit lamed lamed, dalal. It means poor, to hang down loosely, impoverished, no energy, no power, no strength, no wealth, to be beaten down, obscured, degraded. That's the dalit. It also is what means to take a bucket. See, these are all pictures. A bucket from up here and drop it down into a well so that you can gather up water and bring it up here. Well, that's a picture type of Yeshua being willing to humble himself from his grandeur, take on in weakness a poor, disregarded man to come down here to the earth realm so that all who would find life jump into the bucket he provided, him being the dalit, the door, and raise us up. That's the word ayin lamed hey, to be raised up to a higher dignity, a success, a prospering of why we're even on the face of the earth anyway, unto this eternal regard. That's dalit. There's so many different ways to read the text, but it's all in there. So if I just said Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zion, Chet, first 8 letters, there's a whole story there. But if you have no regard to the story, I could just say the words ox, house, camel, door, window, nail, Vav, the, and, connector, weapon, fence. There's where it's hidden in plain sight. Anyway, time to make a break. We'll get on to part 2.